Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
as is now obvious to everyone, Obamacare made health care even more expensive. Premiums are up, copays are up, deductibles are way up. Obamacare has been a disaster, and even the Democrats are admitting it. Let's all remember, Obamacare was sold and based a bunch of lies. You didn't get to keep your doctor, your health plan, and your premiums didn't go down. The Democrats want Medicare for all, which will absolutely ruin the Medicare system and throw 150 million people off the employer-sponsored health insurance they like. That would be a disaster. But there's something that we can do and must do right now to help American families. We must lower prescription drug costs. This is very personal to me. I grew up in a family without health care. My mom struggled to find care for my brother who had a serious disease. Eventually, she found a charity hospital 4 hours away for his treatment. I remember asking my mom how much lower drug costs would have to be for her to consider changing pharmacies. Without missing a beat, she said $1. This story is not uncommon. All over my state, I hear the same thing. Drug prices are rising, and we're having trouble affording the life-saving medication we need. I recently met Sabine Rivera, a 12-year-old from Naples, Florida, who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes more than 2 years ago. She is already worried. She's 12 years old. She's already worried about how she will afford the rising cost of insulin, something no 12-year-old should ever have to stress about. Patients want to shop for better coverage and lower cost, but too often they can't or don't know how. At the same time, pharmaceutical companies are charging low prices for prescription drugs in Canada, Europe, and Japan, but charging American consumers significantly more. Why? Because for too long, politicians have done nothing. American consumers are subsidizing the cost of prescription drugs in Europe and Canada and all over the world. Why should we be doing that? That's certainly not putting America first, and that's not putting American families first. That's why I'm working with President Trump and Republicans and Democrats in Congress to fix this problem. I recently introduced the America First Drug Pricing Plan with Senator Josh Hawley to take real steps to lower costs for patients and put the consumer back in charge of their health care decisions. Part 1 of my bill focuses on transparency. First, pharmacies must inform patients what it will cost to purchase drugs out of pocket instead of using their insurance and copay. If patients choose to pay out of pocket, which is sometimes cheaper, the total cost would be applied to their deductible. Second, insurance companies. They should and must inform patients of the total cost of their prescription drugs 60 days prior to open enrollment. This will allow patients to be consumers and shop around for the best deal. And finally, my bill would simply require that drug companies cannot charge American consumers more for prescription drugs than the lowest price they charge consumers in other industrialized nations. I found that provision to be controversial in Washington. You know where it's not controversial? Everywhere else. In Tampa, Orlando, Miami, and Panama City, all over Florida, this just makes sense. I don't spend a lot of time outside Florida, but I would wager in states across the country, my bill would make a lot of sense too. Why would we as American consumers, who make up 40% of the market for prescription drugs, pay 2 to 6 times more for drugs than consumers in Europe or Canada or Japan? That needs to change. My bill takes real steps to change it, and I believe this should have bipartisan support. I also led 7 of my colleagues in a letter to pharmaceutical companies asking them to work with us on solutions to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We're still waiting to hear back. American consumers are facing a crisis of rising drug costs, and we can't wait any longer. I will not and cannot accept the status quo of rising drug costs. We need to get something done this year, and I'm fighting every day to make sure we do. Mr. President, I yield the floor.